With Syria's civil war winding down and President Bashar al-Assad now controlling more than 60% of the country, his government is ramping up calls to millions of refugees to come home. Just last month at the UN, Syria's foreign minister claimed the country had become more safe and secure. All conditions are now present for the voluntary return of Syrian refugees to the country, he told the General Assembly, adding the return of every Syrian refugee is a priority for the Syrian state. Doors are open for all Syrians abroad to return voluntarily and safely. According to multiple reports, the Russian military says nearly 270,000 refugees have returned home in recent months. Well, that's just a fraction of an estimated 5.6 million Syrians who fled the country during 7 years of violence. There continues to be a slow and steady number making that journey back, but it is a difficult choice. Leave behind the relative safety of a refugee camp where daily life can be harsh and grim, or risk returning to an unstable country where one day there could be the promise of hope for a better future, especially for a generation of children who've known nothing but war.
We are young. We're refugees. We are girls. I know that. But despite all this, our dreams didn't die because we're refugees.
Joining us now from New York is Samantha Vinograd, CNN national security analyst and former top aide to the National Security Advisor in the Obama administration. Samantha, you just returned from visiting the Zaatari camp in Jordan, home to about 80,000 Syrian refugees, which is where you met that girl that we just heard from.
Exactly. I visited the camp a few days last week and was really struck by how excited these children are to just be children. I've worked with UNICEF for several years now, and in the camp and in other camps throughout Jordan and around the world, UNICEF is trying to give these kids what kids all around the world want. They want to go to school, they want health care, they want to play soccer, they want to play with their friends. But the problem is, and what is most impactful for me coming out of the trip is, these children are being children, but their parents are watching them play every day, knowing that their future is so uncertain if they stay in the refugee camps and if they stay in Jordan. And several sets of parents said to me that they're considering returning to Syria, fully knowing the risks, solely so that they can give their children some kind of hope for a future that involves working and going to university and having a more normal adulthood. Despite the security risks, so many families are thinking of going back.
This has to be such an incredibly difficult choice for a parent to make. You know, if you go back, they don't have a lot of faith in Bashar al-Assad, but then what they've been telling you is that they actually, you know, have some sort of belief that maybe Russia and Vladimir Putin can guarantee their safety.
I think that there is a firm recognition that Vladimir Putin is encouraging Assad to do many things. There was a delivery, thank God, of humanitarian assistance to a horrific area known as the Berm between Jordan and Syria. It is a no-man's land where thousands of Syrian refugees are living with no food, no water, no clothes, in brutal conditions. UNICEF tries to get there but is having difficulties. But Putin helped broker agreement for goods to go from Damascus to the Berm with Assad. And so the refugees are hearing these kind of stories and thinking, well, if Putin's really calling the shots here, and he's saying that it's safe for us to go back, if we have his security guarantee, maybe it's okay for us to go back and risk our children's safety.
She's clinging to any hope, I guess. You know, these camps are sprawling. Jordan and the UN have been struggling with this financial burden for years, and it seems the conditions are only going to go from bad to worse. That seems to be a really big factor here for many of these families when they make this decision.
Exactly. And the camps, I was in one of the 4 refugee camps in Jordan, but only about 19% of Syrian refugees live in the camps. They're also spread throughout the country. And there was a lot of funding from Gulf countries, for example, at the beginning. I visited a school funded by the Bahrainis, passed by another one that was initially funded by the Saudis. But that initial funding to build the schools has gone away. And when you look at organizations like UNICEF or other partners, they're now engaged in programs to just keep these kids in school, healthy and fed, and that's going to require a lot more money, and that money is not going to come from the government of Jordan. That has to come from private donors and from countries in a time when the U.S. government, for example, is trying to cut its development assistance and not ramp it up.
How do the kids feel about possibly heading back to a country that either they've never known or the only memories they have, you know, of violence and war?
Well, so many of them were actually born in the camps. The camps that I was in, there are 80 births every week. There's a very high fertility rate in the camps. So based upon how long the war has been going on, most of the children that I interacted with have no memory of Syria. The older children are really engrossed in life in the camps and going to school and therapy and all those other activities. So they're really just trying to focus on their day-to-day. It's really the parents that are grappling with these decisions, knowing the risks on either side, and I think acting like parents do anywhere around the world and trying to let their kids be kids while they make decisions that will impact their children's future.
There's also just the simple practicalities of actually leaving Jordan, trying to get out of that country. Some have passports, many don't. Some fled without any documentation. So just trying to leave Jordan and head back into Syria, that in itself is not exactly easy.
It's not easy, and from what I was told, if they make the decision to leave Jordan to cross back into Syria, I don't think that the Jordanian government will take them back. So it's literally all or nothing. If they decide to go, they are giving away their chances of coming back into a refugee camp, of crossing that border again, and really placing all of their eggs in one basket. And that basket is Assad and Vladimir Putin, which, as we've discussed, is incredibly insecure. And we should also note the rate of resettlement out of Jordan has basically dried up. So the choices really are quite binary. Stay in Jordan and know that your children are going to face a very uncertain future and may spend their entire lives in the camps like Palestinian children are facing, 40 years after their relatives first got there, or risk going back into Syria for the rest of their lives and facing the violence there that may not end anytime soon.
Wow. Yeah. And don't forget, this is a country where half the population are displaced, either internally or they've fled to another country. And this civil war, as you say, the violence continues, even though it is winding down. Samantha, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.